Hi there. We love doing live webinars where we can share best practices and topics of interest to you. To learn more and to access the resources referenced in this video, please scroll down to the video description. Without further ado, I'll turn you over to the team.
All right, let's go ahead and get started. Today, Sharon will be training over daily office management. We're excited about this webinar today. If you have any questions, please put any questions in the chat box on the menu item. And and then we will monitor those and have a Q&A session later in the training. So thank you, Sharon.
All right, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Well, welcome everybody. So, as we've discussed, it's going to be about daily office management today. We're going to talk about what you can use as your best practices and kind of just really what it is. Um, so to review, we're going to summarize, what it is, and we're going to break down the sections like the schedule board review and the actions, the caregiver queries, the visit approval dashboard. We're all familiar with that one, and some best practices to actually make this experience, not only easier on you, but maybe even enjoyable as well as more productive. So as always, before we get started, there's the question like, do I need to know about this? Should I be at this webinar? If you think yes, great, I agree, this is for you. If you're thinking, well, no, I'm a biller, I'm accounting, this isn't something I normally do, actually, no problem. This is going to be useful even if you're generally in a different role. In fact, if you were going to attend just one webinar, I really recommend this one because understanding how that information gets processed and managed and gets to your billing and accounting is really going to be helpful for you. And if you don't know, of course, sit back, watch, and we'll try to answer your questions for you. So here we go. What is office management? What are we talking about here? Well, the first step is handling all those incoming scheduling concerns and updating those visits. This is, your daily life. You're getting those calls. I've got to cancel. I've got to reschedule. Hey, the client wasn't even here. Do we know what's going on? It's dealing with those questions and getting things updated. It's also watching for and addressing issues, and those are signified by the red or black magnifying glasses. While we don't always have time for this, we're always going to recommend it as a best practice because it's just going to make your life a lot easier. In addition, following up with caregivers on potential issues, that's part of your daily office management, or ideally it should be on a daily level. And finally, reviewing and approving those visits in the visit approval dashboard. So to review, that's kind of the 4 core concepts of your visit management, your error management, your outreach, and that final visit review. Okay, so what are the benefits? Especially for one-man operations, or when you only have a handful of administrators. You may think to yourself, I'm not sure if I really have time for that every day. So the benefits of daily office management really do kind of rain down on you across the board. If you are looking at things daily, your billing and payroll is going to be so much easier. Those records are also going to be so much cleaner because you're really tending to things, you're on top of it. It's just like a kitchen where the dishes build up. If you clean as you go, the end of the day is a lot nicer, and the end of the week too. You're also going to have improved relationships with caregivers because if you're asking them what happened today or yesterday, they're going to be able to answer so much more easily than if you say, okay, on Tuesday the 22nd, you were an hour and a half late. Do you know why? They've slept since then. They may not be able to answer carefully or correctly. And that takes everything up. All right. So what about that visit management question? So ideally, there's going to be an admin who's going to handle those incoming requests and then updating them day by day. That's going to be part of your regular schedule board. At the same time, ideally, an admin, maybe there's a different one, maybe it's the same one, who's looking at that schedule board, keeping half an eye on it to see, are things going as expected? When Encoda runs rules on closed visits, we're going to let you know if we think there's something fishy. You're going to get a black or red magnifying glass depending on how concerning the issue is. And if you take a look at that, click on that magnifying glass, look ahead, and start trying to resolve that issue early on, that's going to make things a lot easier. Then there's caregiver outreach. When you identify an issue, you see that black magnifying glass, you go check it out, you see a question. You want to contact the caregiver. This is important, and you've got a lot of different ways to do this: call, text, mobile app chat. It's a wonderful new option. I highly encourage you to consider it if you haven't played with it already. You want to clarify the concern. You want to request supporting documentation if needed. That's in a different color here. One, because it might not be needed depending on your company, state, payer. But if it is needed, it's really needed. And you want to make sure that you get that. And finally, correcting that visit data. Then you've got your visit review. So once you've researched your concerns, you've looked into it, maybe even resolved some in advance, you can do that final visit approval dashboard review. Review it daily for best results. And you know this process. You review the red warnings, follow up if you haven't already, mark as resolved. Similarly, when you're done doing the review, you click approve, you select the reason, add notes if desired, and approve the visit or not, depending on what's the most appropriate selection there for you. Okay, so you may be thinking to yourself, well, I know all this stuff. Well, let's talk about some of the details. Obviously, things can vary. Private pay is going to have a very different standard than Medicaid. With private pay, you can tailor your standards to what best suits your company and clientele. Maybe start and end times are more variable, but the, care plan is a lot less negotiable. With CD or CDS, depending on your state, you may refer to it differently. Your caregivers probably work per their client's schedule, so late arrivals and departures aren't an issue. You know, State requirements vary wildly, honestly, so know your state. So on that note, let's talk about some of that variance, like your TELUS guidance. If you use TELUS as a clearinghouse, you want to choose a TELUS reason code during the approval process if you're missing EVV information. And I do want to clarify, it is EVV information. We do get some confusion where people will put on a reason code on every single visit that is TELUS that needs action, but they don't really care if it went, 8 minutes long, even if that's one of your rules, because you want to review it for billing reasons. They're concerned about missing GPS information, missing clock ins and clock outs. So yes, when you're doing that approval, you would pick that reason. How about paper guidance? Now, in some states, such as Missouri, paper timesheets are no longer an acceptable EVV option, and honestly, most states are heading this direction. So the goal should be to submit a digital claim, even if that digital claim includes some manual data due to an EVV issue. You can see in this little example here on the screen, it says closed by manual, and that's okay. Probably you would need supporting documentation, but it's okay to submit a manually closed visit. What's probably not okay, either already or soon, is to try to turn in a paper timesheet. Again, best practice, what we would recommend is that you keep those paper timesheets on file in Encoda in case of an audit. We try to make it as easy as possible. You click that paper clip, you upload that file, and that way you can easily, rather than sorting through a file cabinet, you know where that timesheet is. It is on file in that visit. Doesn't mean you have to. This is definitely still optional, but we do recommend it. We find it can make your life a little easier. Okay, so what about telephony? Things are changing here too. In some states, again, Missouri, they have a very established program, so they are definitely the first to make a lot of changes. Telephony calls can only be made from the client's landline, not a cell phone. And a lot of states are heading this direction. Some already have switched over. So, best practice is to use that mobile app or the fob if the client doesn't have a landline. I know that was a lot, so let's just review real quick. I'm talking telephony with landline. That works. That's still good in all states. What about telephony with fob? Also good. They're much more comfortable with that than they are for a telephony with a cell phone or things like that. And then there's the mobile app, which is really ideal because you can get those actual signatures. Okay, SAN data. If you're thinking to yourself, I've never heard of TELUS, and you're thinking, but what about SAN data? This is for you. So if you have mandated SAN data EVV reporting, you have some different requirements. You've got a 3-part confirmation of the visit type, the times, and receipt of service, a signature, whether vocal or written. All 3 confirmations need to be present each time, and exceptions need to be explained using the individual codes feature. Supporting documentation should be on file for missing EVV data and checked in the visit approval dashboard. And if the visit data is changed after the visit is closed, the confirmation could be affected and may need to be rerun. So just a little glimpse here, you see, your line by line reasons. You need to be walking through those and making sure your documentation is on file where appropriate. Okay, so what about EVV guidance and goals? Totally different topic. We all know how hard it is in that first month getting caregiver compliance up. But ideally, after that establishing period, we want to get up to 90 to 95% compliance. And obviously, honestly, nearer the higher end. If that feels a little impossible, let's talk about some practices that can get you closer. One is initial training. We really try to give you a lot of options. We try to give you, some PDFs, videos, links, a draft email, and make use of them. It really is going to pay off. And if you do have any caregivers that struggle, consider doing a one-on-one call or something like that because it will pay dividends. Another is fast and consistent follow-ups with your caregivers on errors, because those caregivers, they are going to know that you are going to call them, and they're going to get used to that process. They're going to expect that they need to follow up. Then there's clear standards on supporting documentation. If it's clear from the start, it's going to be a lot easier when you say, hey, you know the rule. You didn't clock in. I'm going to need a timesheet to go along with that. And finally, strong, regular, consistent communication. Whether it's text, phone calls, chat, whatever works best for you and your team. But, regular communication is really going to improve that and make life easier on you too. Okay, so how do I know it's working? A clean schedule board. When you check the schedule board at the end of the day, those magnifying glasses are resolved, white, you are setting yourself up for success. What else? When caregivers reach out to you, when they're reaching out to you, again, they know it's the process. If they don't call you, you're going to call them. You are on the right track. You are creating that environment where communication is clearly important, and they've got to let you know what's going on. And finally, a fast billing and payroll process. When you can head straight to calculate billing and payroll because well, of course, I've got everything caught up through yesterday, you've got it nailed. You are ready to go. Okay, so the big question, will I remember this next month? Don't worry, this webinar has been recorded for your future reference. And as always, we have a help site. You just go to your right-hand menu, you click on help, and it will take you here. And there are so many articles, including lots on daily office management. search for whatever you're looking for. There's a wealth of information. And if you find that you can't find exactly what you're looking for, feel free to write support. They may point you to an article, send you more information, or we can put in a request to add some more information. Our goal is to make this a useful and wonderful library for you. Okay, so we're through the webinar. We are ready for questions. Let me know, has anything I said been unclear? Do you have questions about best practices?
So thank you, Sharon, for going through all of that. So far, we do not have any questions in the chat box. If anybody does want to go ahead and enter a question in the chat box, it will be monitored.
All right. I do want to say, as someone who, used to work in scheduling and billing, I understand how challenging it can be to do this every day, especially in the first weeks. Um, but if you can start making it a daily practice, even if it's just a test period of a week or two, I think you may be astonished by how much it ultimately takes off your plate as opposed to adding to it. So it's worth a shot. Okay. So something new to share. We always try to add, a fun tidbit, something that would be useful to you that you might have missed. So I just want to hop over here to one of our demo environments and point out on the visit approval dashboard, we have a fabulous new filter where you can go searching for violations and kind of look at the big picture and say, I want to see where the patterns are. Is Ms. Carrie Caregiver, is she being consistent now? And that can really help you figure out where your caregiver's weaknesses are, or if there are things that you need to reevaluate. Maybe there's a rule that isn't working for you anymore. If that's the case, feel free to reach out to support. We can help you better tweak your system to, fit you like a glove. All right, so unless there are further questions, that's pretty much a wrap. Thank you. And don't forget, you can always refer a friend and be rewarded for doing so. The link is in your help menu. The greatest compliment you can pay is a reference. That's something I'm sure you know in your own business as well, and we appreciate it whenever you have the opportunity. You can always reach us, of course, at 844-4ANCODA extension 1 or at support@ancoda.com. And I'm sure you know your friendly local project manager as well in case you have a bigger question or concern. And thank you for joining me today. I really appreciate your time and attention, and I hope this was helpful to you. And I hope you have a wonderful spring day and weather as pretty as mine is outside. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Sharon. It does look like during the last piece we do have a question.
Yes.
When a clock-in is on hold in the system, will the visit show the correct schedule and EVV time?
When it's on hold in the system, it should always show the correct scheduled times and it should show the correct clock in time. The EVV time is usually blank, but it does depend on your environment. There are some environments where things are a little bit different, but the EVV departure time is usually blank unless they had departed, been set back to the status of arrived or on hold, and then gone through that process again. It can retain the original departure time if you had kind of gone back in time and done that. So that's something to be aware of.
Great. Thank you very much for answering that question.
Sure. All right. Well, thank you so much. If you do think of something right after this hangs up, you know where we're at. Thank you again. Have a lovely day.